we had begun to discuss the career of Diego Velázquez in Spain. We were looking at the water carrier of Seville, painted when he was around 20 years old in his hometown of Seville, a genre scene. A local court official purchased the work and then presented it to the newly crowned King Philip IV of Spain, who had taken the throne in 1621. Philip admired the work, the water carrier of Seville, and immediately hired Velázquez to be one of his court artists, a job that would last him for the next 40 years, all the way to Velázquez's death in 1660. For Philip IV, Velázquez works primarily as a portrait painter, although not exclusively. Still, the vast majority of works that survive by Velázquez painted for Philip were indeed portraits of Philip and his family. This art fix will focus on Las Meninas, painted just 4 years before Velázquez died, at the very end of his career after about 35 years of painting portraits for Philip. It depicts Velázquez himself in the act of painting Philip IV's youngest daughter, Margarita, Infanta Margarita Teresa. She is at the center of the composition in the foreground. Now, Philip IV was a member of the Habsburg family. His parents were first cousins, and because of inbreeding within the Habsburg family, he was fairly ugly. Velázquez, as we saw in class, cleans him up somewhat, but he still has that Habsburg chin and lip, very elongated nose, puffy lips, bulging cheeks, all elements of the Habsburg physiognomy. Most of Philip's children inherited his good looks, so to speak. Here his older daughter, Maria Teresa, at about age 14 or so, and you can see the family resemblance between her and her father, with again those chipmunk cheeks and puffy lips and long bony nose. Maria Teresa was the only child that Philip IV had that was still alive when Margarita was born. He had had 8 children before Margarita. All of them had died except for Maria Teresa. She's the only one who lived. Of those children, one of them was stillborn. 4 more died within days of being born. All of this due probably to the closeness of the inbreeding within the Habsburg line. Infanta Margarita, the subject of Las Meninas, was the first child of Philip's second marriage. He was a widower, and she was healthy and extremely beautiful, both of which were quite rare for Habsburg children at the time. And she is the focus of our picture. This is certainly what Philip had originally asked for from Velázquez, is a portrait of his daughter. But Velázquez gives him so much more than just that. First, I wanted to look at a few things as we talk about this, and these will be themes that recur as we work our way through the picture. Note the liveliness of the brushwork. As you dive in close, you'll notice that it breaks down and stops being descriptive. In other words, he doesn't want the brushstrokes to actually mimic the form, but to give the illusion of the form. And it becomes almost like an abstract painter as we look at the corsage on her chest. This adds to the vibrancy and the liveliness of the picture, which is a Baroque hallmark, is that sense of vibrancy. We've seen it in a number of different ways as we've looked at Baroque painting. But one of the things that Velázquez also does is he alters the tightness of his brushwork in order to focus your attention. So while the corsage on her chest is very loosely painted, very sketchy, her face is much more resolved. And this is the same way your eye works. I think Velázquez understands that. The things that we focus on are the things that, in fact, sharpen in their focus. And so he brings that to his painting. And what he's trying to do is guide your reception as a viewer to the face of the Infanta Margarita. So she is front and center, and she's accompanied on either side by 2 ladies-in-waiting. Here's the one on the left. This is what meninas means, Las Meninas, the ladies-in-waiting. And it refers to these 2 women in the broad black hoop skirts that are on either side of Infanta Margarita. The one here on the left is engaged with the Infanta, with Margarita, and appears to be serving her tea, as you can see here on a silver platter. You'll notice again how Velázquez uses different resolutions to focus your attention. The hands, as they're moving in this action of serving the tea, are sketchy and loose and blurry. If we look at her costume, the menina on the left, you see, in fact, that the sleeve of that costume is also very sketchily painted, whereas the face, on the other hand, is much more firmly resolved. And again, this is Velázquez's way of getting you to focus on what he wants you to look at. He's guiding you as a viewer. The other lady-in-waiting is looking directly out at us, making eye contact with us, and is in fact one of 6 different figures in the painting who makes direct eye contact. Obviously, the Infanta looks directly at us, as does this court member, this lady-in-waiting. Also looking at us, hiding in the shadows almost, is a court guard on the right, who is talking to her chaperone, Margarita's chaperone, a widow, as we can tell by her dress. You'll notice that here again there are different levels of resolution, and our court guard is all but hidden in shadow and all but blurred out, so that we don't end up diverting our focus to the less important figures in the composition. In the background, standing at the door is another court member, the Queen's Chamberlain. He can actually be identified waiting at the door. So again, this is that space that the Infanta is well attended. But again, everyone looking at us. On the right, we have a pair of dwarves, and the older woman dwarf is also looking directly at us. So again, this all focuses the attention on us in a way, even though, of course, the portrait is of Margarita. The young dwarf next to her is scratching the hind of that dog. Don't believe people who tell you he's kicking it, because that mastiff is way too happy, way too restful to be being kicked. He's in fact giving him a little scratch on his hip, which if you have a dog, you know they absolutely adore. And then, of course, Velázquez himself looks directly at us, paintbrush in hand. And certainly we are meant to understand that he's in the act of painting something. Maybe he's painting us as we look at the picture. Now, who is this us? Well, that's shown in the mirror in the background. We see Philip IV there, again blurry because he's out of focus. He's in the mirror with his second wife, Mariana of Austria. It's almost as if they had just parted that curtain and come into the room. That's the us that everyone is looking at. They're the ones that have the attention of 6 different people in the picture. At the same time, if we look at the reflection, the figures are far too large in that picture to be standing outside of the picture. In fact, the reflection suggests they should be about the same size as Velázquez standing in the foreground. So there's a bit of an oddity to this reflection. It doesn't seem to reflect accurately what it should. Furthermore, that pulled back red curtain that we see in the mirror is something that we see all the time in portraits. Here is a portrait of Mariana of Austria with a pulled back red curtain, another portrait by Velázquez. So it almost suggests as if the mirror itself is reflecting another painting still, which is fascinating because then if it's not reflecting quite properly, could it be reflecting the picture that Velázquez is painting? And that's what some people have suggested, given that it has this artifice of the pulled-back curtain, that the mirror reflects another painting. That said, there are no paintings of Philip and Mariana of the same size as the picture that Velázquez paints, which looks to be about 11 feet tall. However, the painting that we're looking at, Las Meninas itself, is about 11 feet tall, 10.5 feet to be exact. And here we see it in the Prado Museum, so we get a sense of that scale. So what is Velázquez painting? Is he painting the picture we're looking at? And if so, is he looking then at another mirror that reflects these figures so he can see the scene that we're seeing? Is he painting Philip and Mariana in an imaginary portrait, where they are staged with the pulled back curtain so that he can get that just right. All of this is left as a mystery. We have no idea what he's painting because we can't see the other side of his canvas, unless, of course, that mirror reflects his canvas. What we do know is that the painting hung in Philip IV's office, opposite his desk, which meant as he was sitting at his desk, he could look up, and this painting would cover the entire opposite wall, and he would see himself in the reflection, and maybe even been asked to make these same sorts of questions. What is Velázquez painting? And if indeed Velázquez is painting Philip, are the kids just there hanging out, playing around in Velázquez's studio while he paints? Or have they taken a break from posing for him? Again, none of this is exactly clear. But the bottom line is that Philip IV commissioned from Velázquez a portrait of his daughter. And what happened after receiving that commission is that Velázquez seems to have gone rogue and given this instead, a painting that's not necessarily entirely just a portrait, but rather is a painting about the importance of painting. And this is where we need to get into a few more details here. He includes himself in the act of painting, but he's not dressed in his painter's costume. He's dressed as a nobleman, not as a painter. He's also wearing on his chest the cross of the Order of Santiago. This is a very noble order, and he's painted it on there to suggest probably that painting as an activity makes the painter noble, makes the painter an aristocrat, makes the painter a gentleman. This is about the importance of painting as well, something I think that Philip would have quite liked. To drive home this meaning, he includes paintings on the wall that we can identify from the palace inventory. Each of these paintings illustrates a Roman myth, a myth about how artists challenged the gods by making art. Velázquez chose these paintings to be in his studio, but he chose them to be in the work in order to drive home this idea that art elevates the status of the artist, makes him like the gods, makes him very much a noble. Paintings are, after all, in many people's ideas, a mirror of nature. And to drive again this idea of the importance of painting, drive that home, Velázquez includes, amid these pictures that are mirrors of nature, he includes a mirror as well. And that mirror brings questions about how well it reflects. Which of these two reflects nature better, the painting or the mirror? These are some of the questions I think Velázquez is posing for us. So Philip IV seems to have asked for a portrait of his daughter, but what he got instead was one of the greatest paintings in all of Western art, and really a painting that is a testament to the importance